All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. Today, we have Steve Halpern with Compass in New York City and does a lot of business all over New York City, including Manhattan and some in the part of New York where he grew up, Brooklyn. Steve, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome to have you. So everybody, Steve, you heard in the intro, but I want to just repeat. He has been in with Compass. He was the first agent hired as a commission agent. So he's going to help us set the facts straight on Compass and Urban Compass and all of the timeline because I tend to confuse it, especially on the show. But also, Steve, not only was he really the first agent hired as a commission agent, kind of what we know as a residential real estate agent to Compass. He also had one of the first multi-million-dollar listings with Compass, or the first multi-million-dollar listing with Compass, and he also did the first $100,000 monthly rental in New York City, among many other high-end rentals. Steve, it's awesome to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Steve Halpern, born and raised in Brooklyn. I came from the music world. I was a music producer. I played bass. I had a rap career, actually, and I'm 9 years in real estate, actually 9 years now, and 5 years at what started as Urban Compass and became Compass. And, you know, I think my focus is really having a good time and, you know, keeping strong and fun and collaborating just like Compass culture. And yeah, I love what I do. So
awesome. So I want to know, can we have a wrap off? I mean, I write stuff for Elf on the Shelf. Okay. And we have to rhyme and stuff. Like Lila and Fred are our elves, and we get together and actually collaborate on the letter that we're going to leave for my kids before Christmas. So I mean, like, I might be stiff competition.
Are you asking to battle me right now?
Not really.
Because if you want to, we could go for it.
Not really. We got 30 minutes, so everybody might appreciate if we didn't do that. We could do like an afterplay, and we could do a wrap-off on like a review of the interview. Maybe if I'm not too intimidated by the time I'm done with you, or by the time you're done with me.
I'm ready when you are, so let's put it that way.
Right. All right. See, I'm like starting to sweat and stuff. Isaac, where's the fan? I'm kidding.
we have some somewhat rap royalty that works in the New York office.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, then maybe we should go for this.
We have a guy named Terrence Harding who was actually part of Junior Mafia, which is Notorious B.I.G.'s group. So.
Wow. That's exciting. Well, awesome to have you here
Thank you.
Rap star or rap, music producer. You're a partner, by the way, in a digital, which you know these things, but partner in a digital advertising company, which also gives you a real great advantage on marketing. But all of that said, let's start out. Tell us how and why did you become a real estate agent?
Sure. So the story goes back to, I was hustling as a musician, really trying to make a buck. And, unfortunately, the music business became something that it was really it was pretty impossible to make real money. So here I was touring the world, which sounds really glamorous, but in actuality is really a really tough job. And was working with crazy work ethic and making basically very limited amount of funds. So I just said, where would this work ethic and talent sort of serve me best? And really, my wife and I were watching $1 Million Listing LA about 10 years ago. And she was like, you'd be really good at that. And I was like, wait a second, it sparked something in me. It sounds a little corny as a story, but it's kind of the truth.
I love it. Yeah.
And then 2 years later, I was actually on the first season of the New York show. So
how awesome!
I was on one episode. I'm not gonna act like I was one of the, but it was kind of a validation. So I think my personality, my personality lent itself to. I think to be a good real estate agent, you have to be very friendly and fun and enjoy yourself. And so kind of that's where the idea sparked. And I said, if I have a something to sell that is actually something that people want to buy, where music was something that people get pretty much for free, you know, so that's kind of what led me down the path. And then I really fell in love with it.
That's awesome. So, so coming in, you came, obviously you had work ethic, hustle,
Hmm.
but we're talking about a really competitive market. You're in New York City.
Right.
How did you get that first deal? How did you kind of cross that line of getting going and then take us from there? Tell us just about your first deal.
Yeah, sure. So, well, the good thing about New York City that might be is different than a lot of places in the country are you can make real money as a rental agent in New York. So, I started really hustling rentals, and you know, when you're talking about when you're, you know, at the time I was talking about doing small apartments. We're talking about a $2,000 commission here, a $3,000 commission here. It kind of adds up, and you can.
Yeah.
It's not that it's less competitive, but with the amount of people that are moving and doing and renting apartments in New York. So my first deal actually came. I met a friend referred somebody. I walked through the door and I met a doorman at a building, and I gave him my card, being like, if you see anything, and he literally called me a half hour later and was like, somebody was asking around about renting an apartment here,
Yeah.
and he referred me to that person, and that's where I got my first check.
Awesome. So rentals in New York, that's fun.
Yes.
Everybody I've interviewed in New York, that's where pretty much everybody got started. So then you got in.
Right.
How did you know, or when did you know you were going to? You knew obviously because the show is resale or sales, not rentals.
Yeah.
But how did you transition, and how long did it take to transition into real estate
Into
sales?
sales?
And what kind of did you
Sure.
start in the high end, or did you kind of
No, I mean, so the first sale that I did was $205,000. So
in New
in New
York
York City,
City? Was that like that's like buying a pair of shoes?
yeah, pretty much. So, so no, I did not start in luxury sales. What actually happened was my first sales listing was actually a luxury apartment. It was a $3.3 million listing, and
Awesome.
it was in 2010. I met a guy at a networking event, and he had one of the top agents in the city was selling his apartment and basically committing zero time to it. Uh, and I went in with this concept of like, I'm a fighter, a hustler. I'm gonna go and do everything in the world to sell your apartment, and it worked. So,
Awesome. So,
and it took me a year and a half to sell that apartment, but I sold it.
and you kept the client because
I
I knew you
kept the
were
client,
working.
and they've bought from me now, bought and sold from me twice. I think we're on probably transaction number 5 now with them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, going from there,
Hmm.
well, one of the things you're doing now, you're again, we said earlier, you're a partner to a digital advertising company.
Right.
When did you, at what kind of what year did that take? Did you
Sure.
engage in that and that
Well, I
become part
can
of your business?
a little bit of the trajectory of that is that you know, I started playing with video pretty early on in my career because having come from the music world, uh, and being sort of having to do things pretty inexpensive to try and push my marketing out there and get gigs and do things like that, I was able to understand that the right way to really move fast in those worlds was really to do anything that would bring more attention onto something, right?
Right.
So, and at the time when I started doing video, there wasn't much out there. So at first I started saying, okay, well, how can I market properties in a elevated way? And the first thing was the video walkthrough, which people weren't doing at the time.
Yeah.
And then actually when I joined Urban Compass, I did a parody video of me basically as Rocky doing the training session for me coming to this new company, the new rebellious company, right?
Oh, wow. How fun.
And it's awesome. It came out really awesome. It was really fun. And
Is that still out on YouTube?
yeah, yeah, definitely online. It's on my website on the halpernteam.com. You could find it as well. And we launched that out there, and people started to respond to it. So I started saying, well, wait a second. first of all, and I think you could probably speak of this too, is the most successful agents are the ones who find what they're passionate about and really pursue that, right?
Yep.
They align what they do well with how they sell their product, and ultimately it makes it so that it becomes something that they're fully invested in because they love it, right? So when you love something, it's not going to work. It's like,
Exactly.
like doing. So I found that avenue, and then I started saying, hey, well, how can I sell product like this? And then how could I use those videos to get me more opportunities and more listings? And it really just worked every time. Last year, I sold a $8.4 million house through a video on Facebook.
That's awesome.
So when you're doing things like that, you say, wait a second, this really works. So I said, one of my best friends, Alex Castillo, who's now my partner, who I met as a client, we started saying, well, how can we do something more fun, more entertaining, that wasn't meant to just sell a product, but was meant to build a bigger brand? So we started writing out this, I would say it was about 2.5 years ago, we started working on what eventually became Halpern TV. And the idea was that everybody doing real estate videos were trying to sell properties. And I said, I think it's a saturated thing to tell somebody what the difference between a co-op and a condo is, or
Right.
what one neighborhood's value is in comparison to other people. I took the bet that people seeing some fun content would ultimately lead to a bigger name for our brand, and that it would lead to a lot more opportunities for us.
I love it. So I think you've got one of your videos, you do have, don't you have a wrap or in a few of them and wrap offs and whatnot? Or tell us a little bit, like give us a little bit about your content and what you're putting into these videos. And you're doing it in a way that it's fun and different, but it's still it's in a way that still attracts and brings credibility versus what people might assume the opposite to the multi-million-dollar consumer. So tell us a little bit about how you do that.
Sure, awesome. One of my favorite segments, of course. So the idea with that was, first of all, there was having been a musician and having such a deep passion of music, it was like, how do I align the things that I'm passionate about in a way that might actually get some people interested in really both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we came up with an idea. The show's called Beats, Rhymes, and Real Estate Life. I'll also mention that my brother, Mike, who's my best friend, he's our third partner on that company. And he and I used to have a group called the Groove Brothers. And he worked with me in real estate for a number of years, but in the end, brokerage wasn't his thing. So we said, what would be a cool way to make it really fun and engaging? So we said, we'll pick 3 real estate topics out of a hat at random. We'll choose a beat and we'll write a song to it, and then we'll shoot a music video to it. And they ended up coming out really, really cool. One of them, we have 3 of them. One of them is about a day in the life of a New York real estate agent called The Hustle. And it's all about how we're on the subway trying to get uptown, trying to get downtown, and trying all around, and the train won't cooperate with us. Then when we have one that actually is about being in a best and final offer and how to prepare for a best and final offer.
Love it.
And then we have one that is about a landlord trying to evict a tenant, and we're on 2 sides of the door. It's really just fun. It's really fun.
That's awesome. So you take real life situations and you make them fun, but and like they go viral, but
Right.
they're also still informative and building credibility for you in a way that they're like, if these guys can do this, what can they do for me, whether
Right.
it's buying or selling? Because you
Right.
clearly thinking like nobody else does.
What I also figured too is when you're doing something creative, first of all, like everybody wants something a little bit different. Most people, when you're pitching a property or you're pitching a seller and you're trying to, the biggest question is, what can you do for me that other people can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'm not going to be rapping about this apartment or this, or this house, right?
Right.
I don't
or
think
wrapping your listing presentation.
Right. But when I get to explain to people how the understanding of the marketing and the content and the distribution of all that and the eyes that that puts on me ultimately adds more exposure to your property originally.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, it's, should there be a creative outlet in a way for me to present this property in a unique way, and it be cost effective, I'm gonna do that. So
Yeah.
what I'm selling at that point is more like, not only do I have the creative and the distribution and the exposure of the property, I also have the history of selling all this amazing real estate, for higher numbers than other people are doing that just by having a larger exposure base than others have.
So tell us a little bit about how because you weren't, that wasn't all, you weren't, it's been 9 quick years, but
Right.
you weren't always where you are now.
Mm-mm.
Where did you get that traction to get where you are now? How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a pretty serious build from here and there. And I'll say, when I was about 3 years into the business, I got that the listing downtown, which was the first $100,000 a month listing, and $100,000 a month rental. And the owner of that property was a movie director, and I'd never done anything near to that quality of a product, and I pretty much spent every penny I had left in my bank account to market that property. And it's when I started doing creative things that things started to jump off. And then that property, he had actually said to me, I was like, how much do you think it's worth? How much do you want to rent it for? And he said 80. And I said, well, the marketing plan is it being the first $100,000 a month rental in New York. And I was like, anybody who's going to pay 80 is not going to, they're not going to care about the fact that it's 100 in front of it, right? And we launched it, and within, I think, the first 2 months of having that property launched, we had over 60 articles written about it. I was on TV 5 times showcasing the property. So,
wow.
So things just really started to build from there. I mean, again, it's all relationship driven still, in the same way everybody else is doing business. It's just ultimately you make a new client and you do all this extra stuff for them. They're committed to you for life. And then you're getting
and you
a lot
had
more
fun doing it, and you made things
absolutely.
happen for a lot. It cost you more money, but you generated more money for your client and yourself and loyal clients.
It doesn't really matter if it costs you more money, right? I mean,
Right,
the point
exactly.
of the matter is,
exactly.
I always use this analogy for people because people come to me and actually say, what would you do next? I love mentoring people. So I have younger agents who are in Compass who are like, would you take me, can I take you out to lunch? And I always do that. And I always explain to people, I say, if I tell you, give me $10,000 and I'm going to give you 100, when would you say no to that? Right?
Exactly.
And I was like, most people get afraid in spending money because they don't actually believe in the fact that they're actually going to be able to do the transaction.
So well said. Yeah. So well said.
I always say to people, you have to have the confidence that you're going to do what you say you're going to do and that it's going to work.
And especially in New York. I mean, that is,
yes.
Atlanta's a great market. I don't want to take anything from Atlanta, but New York City is just like, are you kidding me? The money and the people and the opportunity. I mean, we've got it in Atlanta as well. It's a different market in a different place, but it's like in New York, it's just that much deeper that you can much further. I feel like you could take
right.
it because of the price points and the opportunities that are there.
But the other side of that as well is that, you have so much competition and, it's much harder to price things sometimes because, we have these crazy expensive properties. Everybody thinks their property is worth more. But again, the way I communicate it always is I say, if I market the property the way that I promise and you're not selling, there's no other variable besides the price at that point because nobody can do what I don't want to say nobody. That sounds obviously really.
I know what you mean. I mean, yeah.
Egotistical. Obviously, we have amazing agents that are able to do, but to be able to prove to somebody, I've put so many eyes on your property by doing these unique things. I've spent double, triple, quadruple what other people would spend, and you're not selling. There's a real conversation to be had at that point.
Exactly, exactly. And it's important that it's a candid conversation that you
Of course.
have, I would say too. So tell us a little bit about, you were, again, the first agent to be hired as a commission agent to Compass. How did
Correct.
you know that was the right decision?
I didn't, but honestly, the irony behind it is I think my story is similar to most people at Compass, in the fact that um, they always, everybody felt that they were taking a risk no matter at what point did they join, and there's some version of the story that almost everybody tells is at some point they either met Robert Refkin, met somebody else, then met Robert Refkin. I just had sort of the opportunity to meet Robert before everybody else. And I'm sitting in a room with this amazing man. At the time, he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt and sneakers. He wasn't wearing suits yet. And we were sitting there having one of the coolest conversations I've ever had with anybody at his level in real estate.
Yeah.
Asking me about what's unique about my business, and getting really excited about the things that I was doing different as opposed to the things that every other head of brokerage told me were mistakes. So I
Yeah.
had gone from all these meetings, from these,
Yeah.
at the time I was looking for a change. It was time for me to move on to a bigger company. And I just saw that heart that he had, and I was like, I really walked out of that room saying, this guy's going to change the industry. Do I want to be a part of that or not? And
You were
it
already
really,
changing the industry, by the way.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And that was exactly my thing. It was like, do I go to a place that's already defined and it's clear what's happening there, or do I go to the place that I'm going to get to be a part of designing the company that I believe is going to be the future of this
And it's
world.
changing
And
the
then
industry.
and then the other side of it was like, well, really, what's the risk? I mean, the business that I had was my business. It was not company specific by any means. And what was actually really what my favorite part of those first 6 months was, in the beginning, Robert did not know that much about brokerage. At this point, he's met with thousands and thousands of people. He has a lot more of a grasp there. But I remember one of the first conversations that we had about talking about, Steve, who do you want to work with? Who do you want to be side by side with every day? What kind of agents do you want to have there? And that's where the conversations of collaboration and a culture of collaboration, and not having jerks around us, not having people that were with crappy reputations, and
Yeah.
so so while it was a risk, I like risk. uh
Yeah.
you know
I can relate.
it's
Yeah.
I believe you can. I could tell.
I can relate. I don't. You've taken it to a whole new level. I find, like, you know, a lot of what you've done, I've done, but you've reminded me of the level that we can always notch it up a level. I mean, I love it. It's amazing.
I mean,
So,
I had the opportunity when again, I was in the right place at the right time, and I really do believe that.
yeah,
And I think it happened for a good reason, and I'm very, very proud of it. So
yeah, it's incredible. So, one more thing, and then we're going to go through the final three. Unless there's stuff you want to add, you're thinking of, like, just bring it in and add it. Um, but we talked about you had the first multi-million-dollar listing with Compass. Was that a big deal? Was that like you had to convince them, or was it just your business, it happened, or what can you tell us about how that went down?
well, that particular property was a client, longtime client, still a client. We're about to launch a condo project that he's building right now. So that particular person was not, it was a built-in client. But what I will tell you is that first year, first 6 months, 8 months, this is, I call it before Leonard, after Leonard.
Right.
Before Leonard period was, pitching during that time. I really like the story is awesome. When you talk about the story of, Ori and Robert meeting and talking to 1,000 people and finding out what industry needs a disruption, and then coming upon how real estate is really this place that needs more integrity and needs more focus on diversity. I developed the story enough that I felt that, along with the way I communicate the marketing that I do, would ultimately not would.
It was
not,
a strength.
It just did it. So
Yeah.
it was. I did not lose very many pitches. I was also coming from a company that didn't have exactly the best reputation on selling products. So
It was
it
kind.
really
It was like
wasn't
it
a
was. It was
deterrent.
easy. Yeah.
And even now, I'll even say it, like I almost have a little bit of a challenge, not selling Compass. Now I don't have to sell Compass. What we hear more in New York, which I look forward to you hearing in your market as well, is like now a lot of people here are like, oh, I know I'm using Compass. It's just a matter of what agent I'm going to use
Which
there,
agent? Yeah.
right? So all the progress that's happening, all the things that are happening so fast, at some point, other people know it faster than me because I've been here so long that I'm just like, oh, I already am running my career along with Compass, but
Right.
they're like so honed in on the new tools that are there, and I'm like, oh, we have that,
It's so I've
but
only been with Compass for 5 months, but it's a little bit
right,
of the same because everything's moving so quickly. I was number one in Atlanta, but
right.
now we have I know that was awesome. How many agents do you have? We don't have any. I was like, are you kidding? Because I knew so much about Compass. I was like, how could you not have any? Like, how could I get to be first? That's actually pretty cool. Which everybody else was like, first, what? But oh my gosh, I totally forgot where I was going with that. Is on the but here I can't keep count. Last I heard, it's between 80 and 90 agents,
Wow.
and that's it was mid-August or like September, whatever. It was by the time this releases, it will probably be
Yeah.
100, maybe more. I don't know because it's going to release a
And
couple of weeks later.
I also know your market. There's a lot of smaller. It's like a lot of more household, smaller companies, plus the big guys, right? So
Right?
it's
Yeah.
I know it's a lot more. I think there's a lot more personal relationships that are happening there. So I mean, they're going to take over Atlanta just the same way as they're doing it in New York, and the same way they're doing it elsewhere. And
And DC and
even if
San Francisco.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even if it takes a little bit longer or it's faster, it doesn't matter. In the meantime, the people are. I'm still very happy coming to work every day in a way that I wasn't at my other companies, and that's 5 years later.
Wow.
So, you know,
5 years, you were basically number one. There were a couple of agents I know that were converted from salary to
right.
commission, but now how many agents are in New York City?
I actually don't know the number, but it's somewhere probably in the almost. I think it's in the 2,000 range. I know it's
Wow.
but I don't. Again, it moves so fast that ultimately I can give you a number from a few weeks ago, and then suddenly it's
Isn't that incredible? Yeah.
it's great. And what I will also say is, the level of agent has always been consistent in regards to how nice people are.
Yeah.
Obviously now we have more, so you don't get to, in the beginning I knew everybody as they came in, and now, I don't know everybody, but,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
That's
it's
awesome.
still a great environment.
That's awesome. So I'm going to do the final three questions that I always
Do it.
love to ask. And I feel like I have so much more. If you'd be willing, we may have to have you come on again.
I'd love
Um,
to, sure.
Isaac's like, that's right. So, number one, what is a book or an influencer that has most impacted your life and career?
Um, so I find myself as a serial jumper when it comes to reading. I always have like 5 or 6 books that I'm kind of jumping between,
Uh huh.
and Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within, is a big one. But then again, I really love like old New York books by musicians, so history. So the Beastie Boys book is insane and amazing,
Really?
and
Okay.
it's literally like gives you such a special connection with New York City because it really paints a really fun
And
time
is
of.
it called the Beastie Boys book?
Yep, it came out. It came out in the end of October
And
actually,
who's
and
the
it's
author?
the Beastie Boys,
I was gonna
the two
say,
remaining members of the Beastie Boys,
wow.
Ad Rock and Mike D. So strong suggestion. And then in
And
regards to,
I actually love the Beastie Boys.
well,
I
the book
don't
is.
even know the singers. I shouldn't claim it too much, but I mean, that's
You don't
awesome.
have to know. Yeah, so their book is
Yeah.
awesome.
Their
But
music's awesome.
I'm a serial podcaster. So
Well, we
I'm
know your favorite
constantly.
podcast. I'm kidding.
Yes, number one is you. So I'm always doing like uh, all kinds of self-help stuff.
Yeah. So wait, so basically on the book, it's
Yeah,
I forgot Awaken the What Within by Tony Robbins.
Awaken the Giant Within. It's called.
Awaken the Giant. Oh, I love that.
Right.
I think if anybody's seen his documentary on Netflix, and
Yeah.
he does that little speech with the guy, and he tells him this story. I actually did that with my son, and it worked. A similar story because he wasn't being his true self, or who I know
Right.
him to be. About like he was a what is it? He's a tiger, but he's hanging out with the
Yes.
whatever, and he had like the
Yeah.
whole. You have to watch it,
Well,
everybody, but the guy was not being himself. He was being who he thought he was supposed to be. And
right.
Tony wrote this little story to him. What were the
Right.
animals? It was like the wolf being raised by the bunny
Right.
rabbits or something silly.
He communicates. I mean, so I've done.
Anyway,
I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. I did. I actually the event that film was filmed at. Not the actual one, but the seminar,
but
which
that
is
seems similar. Is it something about destiny?
Day with
Date
Destiny.
with Destiny.
I just got back from going to that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. I really think it was a true game changer. My first Tony Robbins event was a really anybody anybody who hasn't done it, I really recommend doing something in that world. It really amazing.
That's awesome. So Awaken the Giant
So
Within, Tony Robbins. And so I'm telling stories, but tell me on that book, what is your biggest takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway is really basically telling your mind to shut up and really understanding what your true identity and what you're trying to achieve. And really, the concept there is you're so much bigger than you are. If you let if you keep your mind communicating to you, you're going to limit yourself. So it's really about living in your capability more than what your
Oh,
mind is telling
wow.
you. You know,
Seriously, my next book. I cannot wait to
yeah.
read that. And then the Beastie
And
Boys book.
the statement that he says on that is it's called "Stay in your head, you're dead." He says so. If you
Say it again. He calls it your what?
stay in your head, you're dead is
Stay
the
in your head,
statement.
you're dead. I
Yes.
need that. Like, if
Yeah.
nothing else, we're not even going to like publish this podcast. I'm just going to read that book. I'm done. I'm kidding.
All right.
That's all.
Great. I'm glad I
So
spent the
kidding.
last
This interview is
45
awesome.
minutes.
And do give us, you talked about, are there any podcasts you want to share or any other
Sure.
influencers?
Uh, Impact Theory, Tom Bilyeu, really amazing. Obviously the Gary Vaynerchuk a little bit. I
Love
like what
Gary
he
Vee. I
I
He's
like a lot
fun.
of how he communicates. Then on the other side, I watch a whole bunch of musicians. I mean, again, I think
Yeah.
there's so many out there. Another thing that I always that I focus on is I'm always trying to work on my relationships. So I do a lot of focus on like relationship podcasting, and I just feel like whenever I'm walking down the street or instead of watching TV, I'm going to try and learn something. So I try and fill my head with items that are a little bit more, thought
Say that
provoking.
again for us because I want everybody to take that home. Instead of watching TV, like say that again because I think that's so important to
Sure.
think about and think about what we're doing with our time that we have on this
Well,
planet with our life.
I mean, I think the most reflective thing is, like a lot of people sit in front of watching like CNN or some type of news channel, right? And ultimately, all you're doing is feeding yourself with negativity and
And
fear.
it's not the truth, by the way. I will not watch the news. Don't want to get too
Right.
like opinionated here, but I'm with you
Right.
because it's not
So,
the truth. Right.
I'm not saying I never watch TV when it's time to relax, but like, the more time you spend learning and filling your mind with things that are going to serve you, the more focused and dedicated you're going to be on actually achieving things. And because when everything else goes silent and your brain starts talking, the thing that they're going to speak to you is
Is
going to
what
be
you put in
things that
it.
you've been listening to and what you put into it. So if you're fueling it with amazing things that are there to really push you forward, you're going to live in that space a lot more often, right?
Well, and I want the other thing is it's the people you spend your time with, and not to
Of
get on a
course.
big Compass train, because it's not just that, but that is a benefit of Compass. What you said about the
Of course.
culture, but
Of
whatever it
course.
is, like you're not hanging out with everybody at Compass now. There's 2,000 people there, but in
Right.
whatever you do, align yourself with people who you want to be like and grow with.
Right.
My big thing is I don't want to be the biggest, well, being the biggest fish in the ocean or whatever, that might be cool, but that's not the point. It's being the best version of yourself and being around people that are going to
Right.
drive you. And, being the company I was with before, it did the same thing. I was with great agents with whom I didn't have
Right.
to think about it. I elevated to what I was present in. Same thing at
Right.
Compass. You
Right.
naturally elevate to who and what you're around and what you're putting into your mind.
And we have the best examples of that in front of us. I mean, your podcast with Leonard. I mean, you're literally like Leonard is one of the nicest people you can ever
Yes,
meet,
he
and
is.
not in one moment when you're meeting with that man or talking to him, do you not feel like he's fully present and his heart is speaking to you exactly? And like so,
Yeah.
if if that man could be as successful as he is and be that amazing and that nice and like we have the perfect example in front of us. You're doing these every time you do one of these podcasts, you must have that emotion. It's like
Yeah.
so again, I think that's exactly the example is in front of us. We just have to make sure that you know we all have our issues, ups
A
and
lot.
downs. We just ultimately have to stay focused on being our true selves, and ultimately if we do that, we're going to be successful.
Exactly. So, final thing.
Okay.
In our interview, if there is one, if you could pick, if there was only going to be one thing that I and everybody listening was going to be able to remember and retain from this interview, what would you hope that would be?
um, I, I think is probably try and do what you're most passionate about, and be your true self, and really ultimately that's what's going to lead you to the promised land, and probably the most success, because you're going to want to put much more into it. So I really think that's where my success has come from, and I think I would bet almost everybody who's successful in our business has found some version of that.
And in any business.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, thank you. That's a
Thank
great
you.
place to finish it. I appreciate it.